questions. The
Honourable Leader of the Opposition. After 9 years of this Prime Minister, they're not worth the cost. Taxes and inflationary deficits are piling up, and even worse, the Bloc and the Liberals want to radically hike taxes on gasoline and diesel. When 25 countries have cut gas taxes and Western provinces have cut tax and were able to bring down prices at the pumps and lower inflation in terms of other provinces, how come the PM cannot follow my common sense plan to eliminate taxes until Labor Day? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, I'm so happy that the Conservative leader raised the question of inflation, because it gives me the opportunity today to share great news with Canadians. It's that our inflation rate dropped to 2.7%. This is the lowest level in 3 years, and it's thanks to our responsible plan for the budget. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Learned the terrible news that inflation is 35% above target. Again, after 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost of debt interest. And they can't do basic math over there. The 0.7 is actually a third higher than the 2% target. They're patting themselves on the back when they realize that Canadians can't afford to eat, heat, and house themselves. So why don't they, instead of quadrupling the carbon tax on the backs of Canadians, why don't they follow our common sense plan to suspend all gas and diesel tax until Labor Day?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader has quite proudly and publicly called for the Governor of the Bank of Canada to be fired. But maybe it's the Conservative leader who should lose his job, because he just revealed his astonishing ignorance of the Bank of Canada's inflation target. The Bank of Canada has a target of between 1% and 3%, and for 4 months in a row, inflation in Canada has been within that target. What it means for Canadians?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The minister doesn't even know that the target is 2%, and perhaps one of the reasons why she's missing the target because she doesn't know what it is. It's the same thing with interest rates that we're paying on national debt. They've said that doubling national debt is an issue because the interest rates were so low. That's why I suggested setting the rate with 10 or 30 years with bond rates when the rates were so low, like we do with mortgages. But the incompetent minister did not do this, and now we're going to pay more interest on the $400 billion that will be renewed this year. Why? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, the reality is that the Conservative leader is very incompetent. The only thing that he plans to do, is to criticize Canada and Canadians, to criticize our wonderful country. The reality is that the inflation rate is down to 2.7%. This is very successful for our country, and all members should be happy with this. Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Not only does the incompetent finance minister not know the inflation target, she doesn't know that you lock in low rates when you have the chance. Remember, the Prime Minister was saying, don't worry, we can double the national debt because interest rates are low. Yep. Glenn, problem is, I told him at the time that they should lock in those rates for 10 years or 30 years with long-term bonds. It turns out they didn't do that, and now $400 billion of that debt will roll over into these higher rates, forcing Canadians to spend more on interest than on health care. Why did he hire the worst mortgage broker in the world to be our finance minister?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, it's clear that the Conservative leader is in a grouchy mood today. And I think we all know why. The only thing he knows how to do is talk down Canada. And what he just cannot bear is the reality that thanks to our fiscally responsible economic plan, inflation is at a 3-year low.
That's right.
Inflation has been within the Bank of Canada range for 4 months in a row. That's good news for Canada and Canadians.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Think that you pay down debt by borrowing more, that you stop inflation by printing money, and that you fight the drug overdose crisis by legalizing hard drugs. So at least they're consistent in their irrationality, Mr. Speaker. But now they've been forced to backtrack right before the election on their legalization of hard drugs because Canadians are revolting against the policy. Today we have a motion that will be voted in the House to permanently ban hard drugs. Will this government vote for that motion, or will they admit that they plan to legalize drugs again after the next election?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader is wearing more makeup than I am today. Now, I think it's wonderful.
I'm going to ask colleagues. I'm going to ask the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance to withdraw that comment. We don't comment on the appearances of members. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, I withdraw that comment.
Can continue with her. She has 25 seconds left on the clock for her answer.
The fact is, Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader is phony all the way through. He is phony when it comes to his concern about the economy. All he can do is talk our country down. And he is phony when he talks about his concern about the opioids crisis. He tries to score cheap partisan points. It's just not right, Mr. Speaker.
That's right.